Hey guys, so I wanted to talk about the recent remake of Resident Evil 3. This game has been getting bashed quite a bit lately, and there are some legitimate criticisms about it. But I don't think this was a bad game. There are bugs, one-shot enemies, and some minor annoyances, but there's also action, terror, a good narrative, and some incentive to replay the game. I'm going to talk about why I think Resident Evil Remake may not have been a great game, but it was definitely a good game that is worth playing, albeit at a reduced price. Nemesis is back, and he actually looks pretty terrifying. There are scenes that make him look like an unstoppable killing machine. I remember when I played the original, I hated having to deal with him. He added so much pressure to the experience that I was paranoid about when he would come out next to try and impale faces with his tentacle, while I was trying to deal with other zombies. In this version, his presence and the danger he presents is introduced early on, so the player understands the threat that this foe poses. Admittedly, he doesn't attack you nearly as much as he did in the original or at random like before. Since the remake is a lot shorter than the original, and you don't need to make last-minute decisions while he's right in front of you, his presence isn't felt as much. Once you realize that, the game is a little more easygoing. Since I had the expectation he was always going to be around, the first playthrough did have that pressure. It's annoying having to fight the creature like 5 or 6 times wondering if he's going to die, but this was always the way Nemesis was. Raccoon City looks good with new visuals. Even though the game is set in the 90s, everything has been updated to look crisp and beautifully destroyed. The characters are detailed as well, each with their own unique look, including Jill. The screen while playing is all cleaned up. No HUD messing up the screen during gameplay. I don't think you had a HUD before either, but there's a lot more to look at now with a new perspective. It feels more movie-like in this regard, and it pulls me into the game and makes it more of an interactive cinematic experience. The fixed scenes from the previous games did well to set an ambiance of the zombie apocalypse. The remake manages to keep that terrifying setting while giving you the option to look around and interact with more of your environment. As far as weapons go, the usual guns make their return, the main ones being the pistol and the shotgun, with several attachments to be found throughout the game. There are a few different enemy types, simple zombies that are usually only a threat if you let them wander into you, and can be pretty easily dispatched if you manage to get some good headshots. The downside of these is that as soon as they grab you, you'll get a button prompt that never ends in you escaping. You always get bit. I don't understand why the option to use an item to save yourself didn't make it over from the Resident Evil 2 remake. Apparently the button prompt can lessen the damage you take, but it gets annoying after a while when you know that this animation always has to happen. Fortunately, you don't really get swarmed when navigating the world, so it doesn't feel like too much. You only feel like you're being flooded with zombies in a few appropriate parts. There are also special zombie types that require particular methods to taking them out. The Paleheads from Resident Evil 2 is one such enemy that's nearly invincible to everything but one gun. I tried several different weapons before finally killing them, so I mostly avoided them to finish whatever objectives were around. The bothersome enemies are the Gamma and the Hunter. They both have a one-shot that instantly kills you, but the Gamma is slow and you have much more of an opportunity to fight back. The Hunter, however, is fast and can kill you by chasing you and slashing you because it runs faster than you do. It can also perform quick dodges and takes a lot of damage to take down. I don't mind the bad aiming and limited ammo, but having to face a monster that can insta-kill, run faster than you, and have lots of health is a little frustrating. Jill Valentine is the center of Resident Evil 3 and very similar to Lara Croft. She takes a lot of abuse, and I can't even count the explosions she's hit with. Fireballs, explosives, car accidents, big falls. She may be more of a tank than Nemesis. I like Jill in this remake. Her updated character model, her attitude, and the fact that she's willing to go head-to-head with Nemesis makes for a more interesting character. Just like last time, Jill has some help in dealing with the zombies in Nemesis. Carlos is a good addition that gives you a different perspective on the events taking place. His character model is also updated and he no longer has an axe type. At some point you'll take control of Carlos and new weapons and abilities like knocking zombies back with a shoulder charge or punch, depending on your dodge, become available to you. An assault rifle and a lot more ammo are the most immediate things I noticed. Carlos has a much more forward approach available to him when dealing with zombies, so his character has more of a military vibe. There's a nice balance between the two characters as there are different options available to each. Carlos has more attack capability, but Jill has the ability to pick locks and fit into smaller spaces than Carlos. The relationship between the two of them is a good thing as it makes you want these two to make it out of Raccoon City. Resident Evil 3 isn't a particularly long game. You could probably knock it out in a few hours if you were really dedicated. There is more to do after the game is beaten. A store is unlocked in the options menu and a few things to make the games more interesting. New costumes, special weapons, and increases to inventory or stats can be unlocked here. There are also challenges that once completed give you the currency to use in the store and unlock some new artwork. After completing the game, I realized that one of the biggest differences from the previous games is that it can be more action-based. If you look around, you can come across more ammo than you'll use, even if you kill every monster that you see. Because you don't have to worry about conserving ammo, you don't have to worry about avoiding fights to save for the bigger one. You also realize that Nemesis is not the constant headache that he was in the original. He's not going to come through a window when you least expect it, or make you run for a safe room in the middle of investigating something. The constant fear is no longer there, but I also think that you don't know that in the first playthrough. After playing the original, I was expecting him to come out in a moment's notice and I would have to run for my life. I do like more of a relaxed vibe so I can really explore around the game, but there isn't a ton of side stuff to do. I also imagine that people who are playing this game want that added pressure to add to the experience. There are a few sections missing from the original game, and I was wondering why they were removed. You actually go to the clock tower, and I was expecting to have some kind of mission in there, but nothing really happens with it. The option to take different paths and make split-second decisions is also gone for a more straightforward story. Was the option of having different endings going to be too much to account for in the next game? Why take away from the replay value by not letting the game play out differently depending on your choices? Maybe some of the reasons that they weren't included is because of the time constraints that made it almost impossible to add more. Either way, taking out entire sections and the ability to make game-changing choices only hinders it. One of the biggest problems I had with this game was the bugs. For whatever reason, shortly after meeting with Carlos, the audio begins to drop out for a second and the dialogue is off. This happens through several parts of the game and it's so noticeable that it takes me right out of the immersion. The lip sync would no longer match up during some cutscenes in regular gameplay.
Carlos, you didn't even think to ask fine young lady her name? She is an elite operative of RPD, Special Tactics and Rescue Service. Her name is something Valentine.
It's Jill.
When you meet the most annoying character, Nikolai, his accent and mumbling, along with the audio lag and drop, make his dialogue almost inconceivable. I know there is supposed to be some kind of emotional weight to Jill's interactions with him, but I found myself struggling to listen to the conversation. There's also an issue of the camera in relation to the character. Sometimes the camera is so close that I can't move because there's a 3-foot-high box next to my character that isn't showing up on screen. There's also a part where you meet Nikolai for the final time, and Jill literally runs through a metal door. The Resident Evil 3 remake had a lot of things that were actually good. It's a great looking game with good actors, animation, and incentive to keep playing in the form of challenges, and a building relationship between Jill and Carlos. It stumbles because of the length of the game, and so much being cut from the original. To cut so much out and not offer the options to make game-changing choices only hinder it from being enjoyable beyond the initial playthrough. It also suffers from audio issues and cheap one-shots and pulled me out of the experience before I could really get invested. It's a decent game, but anything beyond the initial playthrough is probably not worth it. So that's it. If you enjoyed this video or thought it was interesting, please like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.